Hi, this is Bob from Hobby Concepts, and I'm back. I am sorry I have not been posting lately, but I have been super busy shipping orders, getting inventory back in control, and building a few trucks. But woo, finally, back to do a video, the thing I like to do the most. So today, I've got a grand hauler here, and I am going to install Beier's new MSM system. Now I'm going to do a complete install video because I've done a kind of a review video on it, but I wanted to show actually putting it in a truck. And this truck is beautiful. It is lit up like a Christmas tree. It has cab lights, bumper lights. That's a stock bumper, by the way. All kinds of goodies, all kinds of stock bumper in the back too. All kinds of lighting effects, all on a FlySky, standard FlySky 10-channel radio. It has like 5 different horns, all kinds of cool special effects, and it's super easy to do. So I'm not building the truck today in the video, although you'll see a lot of truck build. Mostly this is about installing the MSM system. Let's get started. Alright, so today I'm going to, as I mentioned, do a full install of the Beier MSM-1 system in a Tamiya truck. So I've got this grand hauler here that I put together, and it's not completely assembled, but as you can see it's painted and got some of the details on. What I haven't done are the lights. So I want to show step by step how I figure out and how I do the lighting in this truck with the MSM system. So I've got the truck. I've got a FlySky, a modified FS-I6X 10-channel radio with a 10-channel receiver, so we're going to use that. And this is the radio I'll probably be using pretty much forever with the MSM-1. It's a perfect combination. So we've got that radio. We've got a Hobby Wing 1060 speed control, kind of a standard speed control, and a Tamiya battery adapter. Then I've got the MSM starter package, and that includes the MSM module, the speaker box, 3 packages of various LEDs, a volume control knob, the manual, some shrink tube, and some wire. So that's our standard MSM starter package. We're going to use that. And then because I want to do some extra lighting, plus show how to integrate other lights along with the MSM, I've got a low profile light bar. You can see I've already painted it gray where it was white, and so I want to show how to integrate that. I've got an extra package of 3mm amber LEDs because we're going to light up the bumper and do some underglow lights. And then I have a Hobby Concepts electronic switch. So those are the things we're going to be using to do this truck. Now, the basic truck is completely stock, with the exception of course, ball bearings, which I put in every truck, a 55-turn motor, which I put in every truck. This one's got aluminum wheels, front and rear, and then it's also got a servo mounted in the coupler. I don't have the link arm, but I have a separate video on how to do this servo operated coupler, and pretty much I just do that in every truck I build now because it's easy to do, and I like having the coupler work by a servo. The cab is very straightforward. It's going to have the stock lighting, except we're going to add 2 headlights instead of the single. It does have metal horns. Again, I put metal horns on every truck I build because they don't break off. And I'm going to use an aluminum grill, which I haven't got yet, but I'll put that on there. So basically a nice standard grand hauler. We're going to use the stock rear bumper, and we're going to use the stock front bumper, but we're going to drill holes in it and add LEDs. Now the stock bumper has got, you can see, some marks here that are designed to drill out so you can add LEDs. So I'll actually probably start my lighting by doing that. I will drill these out with an 1/8" drill, and I will take some of these extra amber LEDs and we'll glue them in here and wire them up. And I'm going to show every little detail of the wiring. So if you've got an MSM system, this is exactly how you will install it. And the truck may vary, but the way it works is the same. So we'll start by drilling out the bumper and adding lights to that. And then I'm going to add some underglow lights. So I will add an underglow light on each side here, and I'll drill a couple holes in the frame and add a couple more. So I'll start with that and we'll get those installed. So here's the front bumper. You can see that I drilled the holes, mounted some 3mm amber LEDs in there, glued them in with hot glue, and then I hooked all the plus wires and all the minus wires together. So that's just step one for the front bumper. On the rear bumper, I've installed the 3 white 3mm backup lights, and I was getting ready to install some of these side lights, but then I noticed that they also have embossed areas that could be drilled out. So I'm going to drill those out and put amber lights in the rear bumper also, and then eventually those lights and these bumper lights will go on at the same time. So I'll actually have the cab roof lights, the bumper lights here in the front, and the bumper lights here in the back all turn on and off at the same time. But I want this thing to have a ton of lights, and that's an easy way to do it. So I will drill those out and put some amber LEDs in there also. As I move along on this, of course, the front bumper we've got. The rear bumper, I added those extra amber lights in the middle, and then these 2 lights right here are also amber, and I tied all the positives and negatives together for each group of lights. I'll show later what we do with those. So now I've got to put the turn signals, which I'll use an amber bulb on the outside, and then I'll put tail lights and brake lights, and those will be 5mm bulbs. I'll wire those up. And then for the underglow lights, you can see the wires here. I basically added a light underneath each step and then drilled a hole in the frame and added a couple more lights. I will do the same thing with these as I've done with these, which is tie all the positives and negatives together, and those will run up to the electronics. So continuing on, I'm going to go ahead and finish up this back bumper. I'm going to wire these together, and then I will show you how I tie all these wires together and run them up front. So I'm ready to install these other lights, and I'll show you kind of what I've done here. Is I soldered the negative leads together. Now, since this is a positive grounding system, all the colored leads are eventually going to go together into one ground wire. So I don't worry about those. I did this so I can tell, get the right lights. This is going to be the inner light here, like that. And then this set will be the next light over. Need to bend these over. And so this will be this light here. And I just heard Winston snoring in the background. And then the turn signals, I have not done anything to those, and they will be in the outer position. So I know it looks a mess, but again, I'll continue to show you how I do this. Now these little covers that hold the lights in, I have actually cut open this opening so it's wider, and then they will just go on here and screw down to hold all these lights in, and then I'll hook all these wires together and make a nice little wiring loom to run up front. So I have my lights installed, and now I have a bunch of wires coming out, and it's like, it looks so complicated, but it's really not. And also, a lot of people are like, Bob, how come you didn't mark anything? Well, I used to do that, but now I just solder everything together and use my electric power to see what light is what. Now, and I'll describe that later. So now, what do I do with this mess? Well, the first thing I do is I'm going to hook all the colored wires together. Okay, so these wires will go like this, and I'll take these three, and they'll go like this, and then all those colored wires and these colored wires will all hook together, and I'll have one black wire going up to the front. So in reality, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these three wires right here, and I'll just kind of show how I do this. And that's the colored wires, the positive wires from this side. So then I'll strip them. And hook them together. Get a little solder here. And just tin that real well. Then I'll do the same thing on this side with these three. I'll just clip them off. Now you can see that this mess of wiring is already starting to look better. I know this is a little slow, but I really want to show kind of this whole process. And of course I added a lot of lights in this rear bumper, so generally you probably won't have this many. Twist those together. And tin them. Okay, so now I have these groups of wires. Now what I'm going to do is hook all of these together. Since I have these nice little pieces of wire, I'll just strip this. Come on. I'll tin it. And then what I'm going to do is take this one, and I don't know if I can do this so you can see it good, but I'll just stick these together. Okay, so now I've got a wire here. Do another one, tin it. Put it on this side. I have a whole video on how to solder if you are interested in the technical details. I'll do this one. Okay, so now what I've done is I've hooked these colored sets together, and I will clip these and basically do the same thing. I will twist these together, and I'm going to add another one to this colored set, and so I'll have 4 wires here twisted together, and then those will go into one wire that goes up front. Now I'm going to put some shrink tube on these before I solder those together, and I'll put a lead on here, and then I'll come back and show you the rest of that process. So you can see I took those wires, all the colored wires, and I ran them up to one black wire. Now I like to use black for my ground. These are positive grounds. And then I just want to shrink this, and the way I do that is I put a piece of the small shrink on here and slide it down the wire. And you notice I left there's a couple feet of wire, enough to reach the front of the truck. And so we'll put that small shrink on there, and then we'll put a big piece on. The kit comes with 2 different sizes, and the big piece will cover all these wires here. Stupid bandage on my finger is making it hard to grab this. Okay, and then I'll just shrink those. Okay, so there's all my positives hooked together. Now I've got, these are my turn signals, and I know that because they're the only 2 loose ones. And then one of these is my brake lights and one is my tail light. So I will hook a piece of red wire to each of these to run up to the front. And again, I don't mark them, but later what I'll do when it's time to hook them up, I'll just hook batteries to them and test them to see which light is which. So that makes it pretty simple. So I'll go ahead and hook some red wires to this, and that will take care of the rear bumper, and I can install it and run the wiring up. And that's basically how you'll do every wire in the whole truck to get it up to the MSM. Well, here's the finished bumper with a couple feet of wire, and it turned out just fine. So now what I've got, I tinned the ends of these so that it would be easier for me to do testing, and I've got my power supply here set to 7.2 volts approximately. So we'll hook up the positive lead to my black wire here, because remember it's positive ground, and now I can just test these by hooking my lead. So there's my right turn, here's a brake light, here's a tail light, here's a left turn, there's my marker lights, and you can see the additional LEDs plus those 2, and then finally probably would be my backup lights. Yeah, so those all work, and again, I did not put any tags or anything on these. You could certainly do that. You could use different color wire, whatever works for you. I do it this way because if I try and tag them, it makes it harder for me to pull the wires through. So now what I'll do is I'll take a piece of spiral wrap, and well, actually, let me get a piece, I'll show that. Alright, well, there's a piece of spiral wrap that comes with the starter kit. It's 2 feet long, and I'll just start wrapping it around these wires. I love this stuff. It makes the wires really easy to hide underneath the frame of the truck and to run. So we'll just wrap these up in spiral wrap for a ways. The other thing, of course, is it protects the wires. Okay, so I'm going to continue to wrap this up, and what I'll do is I will wrap it up to about here, and that way I can join in my servo wire for the coupler, and I will go to work and solder these up so I can pull a wire up for that too, and I'll contain that in the spiral wrap. So I'll go ahead and do those things, and that'll take care of the whole back end of the truck, including the underglow lights, the coupler, servo operated coupler, and all the lights in the rear bumper. Well, there's the bumper mounted. You can see my wiring coming out, and now this is going to be the fun part, to hook that up to the MSM, but that's actually the easy part. You can see how the wiring runs up underneath here, and then I'll use the spiral wrap to contain the rest of these wires. So I'm going to go ahead, I need an extension for this servo. I'll go ahead and run this stuff up, mount the plate here, and then show how I'm going to mount the MSM, which is super easy because it's tiny. So I'll have lots of room. And so we'll get going on that. So I have all my chassis wiring pulled now. It's all right up here where I want it to be. So I've got 3 sets of wires. The first set are the red and black wires coming from the front bumper lights that we added. This set is from the underglow lights. And then of course this is everything from the rear bumper, including the coupler. So we're going to obviously run everything up here. This is the fun part. This is what I really like doing. So the first thing is, where are we going to put things? Okay, well, the great thing about this unit is it's tiny, and so it can fit virtually anywhere. And I had kind of thought about maybe doing this here and the speaker here. It's so compact that you can really really kind of put it anywhere, and I would put the receiver underneath. But then I thought, well, I'm going to put the speaker up front here, and I'm just going to use double sticky tape and mount it right on top of the servos. So it'll be something like that. Now, in order to do that, the wire that comes with the speaker is just a little too short. So I'll extend that a little bit. I can run underneath the plate and run it up here and plug it into my MSM. So this will go up here. I'll mount this right here. I'll do it that direction so that my wires that tie the MSM to the receiver will just loop through here, and then my cable, my output cable, will just plug in here and hook to my wires. Now I also am going to have wires coming from the body. Obviously the headlights, the turn signals, and those upper cab roof lights will have to go on here. So I'll add a second plug, and I'll show you as I do that. So there's the planning there. Now the next set of planning is what am I going to have operate what? Now if we go to the truck layouts here, we have 4 different light assignments, light 1, 2, 3, and 4. So my thoughts are, and you can use those for anything, but my thoughts are, number 1 is going to be headlights, headlight and tail lights, okay? Number 2 will be high beams. And you know, you people who know grand haulers say, wait a minute, they don't have high beams. Well, this will. We'll show you how to do that too. Number 3 is going to be my my bumpers, bumper, and I'll call that and the cab lights, bumper and cab lights. So that'll be all the orange lights in the front bumper, the orange lights on the top of the cab, and the orange lights in the rear bumper. And then number 4 is going to be my underglow. Okay, and that's the lights underneath. So those are my 4 outputs. Now, obviously, 5 and 6 are left turn. 6 is right turn. 7 is brake lights, and 8 is backup lights. Now those, when you look at the manual, those are fixed. Okay, and each one of those corresponds with a color on this output cable. And then the last two here, the black and white ones, are our commons, which are our grounds. And so what I'm going to do is all the black wires from the body will hook to the black one here, and all the black wires from the cab will hook to the white one there. And then the other wires will hook to these as appropriate. So first thing I'm going to do is mount the speaker, mount this little box, and then we'll show you how I'm going to solder everything up. We'll hook everything up like this, and then we'll turn on the unit and show how it works. Now we also have to have power. There's a plus and minus power here, and so those are going to tap into the main power leads on the speed control. So I will go ahead and pop out the speed control, and maybe we'll even start with that. So I'll get that stuff out and we'll show you how we do it. So here's my speed control, and I also have an adapter so I can use different battery connectors. I can either use the Dean style T connector or the Tamiya style connector. But what I need to do is power my MSM. Now in the box with the MSM comes a fuse holder. So what I'm going to do is I am going to clip the wires here. Get rid of that adapter. And then I am going to solder a wire here, and then I'll solder a black wire here, and then those two wires will run to my input ports on my MSM. So let me get set up and I'll solder those up. So here's what this looks like when it's all done. You can see I tapped in a red wire and a black wire right into the main power leads, and then these wires will go directly to the plus and minus on the MSM when I install it. So that's how you power it. Now you could power it with a separate battery, I suppose, but that doesn't make any sense. You got one battery, you may as well use it. The other plugs on this, of course, are a plug for our loudspeaker and a plug for our volume control knob. So now it's time to go ahead and start to install this. And so I will get the truck organized and kind of show you where I'm going to put everything. The speed control, I'm just going to mount right here, and the on-off switch will go underneath this deck so you can reach it from the outside. Obviously my battery plug will be here. These are the two plugs that will go to the motor wires, which the motor wires are not long enough, so I need to extend those and get everything routed under the deck. So we'll go ahead and do that, some of those things, and then we can start working on the MSM. Well, now it's time to start hooking these wires up from the lights. Okay, so you can see here that I have mounted my speaker. It's solidly mounted. I've run all the wires back. Everything's pulled up here through the center. I've taken all the grounds, the positive grounds, remember, so this is every positive light wire in the truck so far, and I've tied them all together, and those will connect to the ground wire here eventually. But right now I'm leaving it unconnected so I can hook my power supply to it to see which wire is which. The first one I'm going to hook up is my underglow lights. Okay, and I checked to make sure this is the wire. And remember that goes to output number 4. In the book, there's a handy wiring diagram here somewhere. Right here. And output number 4 is the yellow wire. So this will connect to the yellow wire. You can see I've stripped these and tinned them. So I will just connect this to this, and that will hook up my first set of lights, which are the underglow lights. Now you can also see that I've hooked up my power wires. to the speed control. So we're getting there. So I'm going to go ahead and hook this one up, and then we'll connect the second one. The next one I'm going to hook up are my backup lights. Backup lights are number 8. On this output lead, it's the gray wire. I've already identified my backup lights, so I'm going to solder these two together. And then I'll have a couple of them hooked up. And then the rest of them are going to be a little trickier because we have lights both in the chassis and in the body. So I'll show you how I'm going to handle that. Alright, the next one I'm going to hook up are my marker lights. Now I've got the front bumper marker lights and I've got the rear bumper marker lights, all those extra lights we put in. But then I'm also going to have the marker lights on the cab. So these are the two from the chassis, the front bumper and the rear bumper. They're going to hook to the orange lead, which is output 3, like that. But what I need to do is I need to have another wire run up into the cab. So the wire that came on this was extra long, that came on this plug. So I clipped a piece off. So now I have some nice colored wires. So I'm going to take the orange one here. And that's going to give me an extra wire to run up into the cab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip this. And then I'm going to add it right onto these two wires. Just like that. Tin that. Okay. Now, when I hook it to the orange wire here, I will have another wire to run up into the cab. That's pretty straightforward. A little piece of shrink tubing, we'll put it on here. And we'll solder that together. And that hooks up my marker lights. Shrink that. Okay, and so now I have a marker light to go up to the cab, and it's already color coded, so I'll know what it is. Now what I'm going to do, you can see that I've got a plug here, is I'm actually going to run all these wires to the cab up through a plug so I can plug and unplug the cab. You don't need to do that. You could just obviously wire it, hard solder it, but I like to be able to plug the cab, unplug the cab so I can take it off to work on it. So eventually these wires will all run through this 6-pin plug. You can see I've already got the ground, positive ground wire hooked up, and the rest of them I'll just hook up in order. So I will do the same thing for the tail lights, for example, because I'm going to have the headlights in the cab, the tail lights down here. That'll be one of them. The turn signals. There's 2 turn signals in the chassis, but there's also 2 turn signals in the body, so I'll have to do the turn signal wires. So I'll go ahead and hook those all up and show you what it looks like when it's finished. So there's all my wiring hooked up. My plug is completely wired, and then I pulled off the wires that are going to go to the cab. You can see my little plug here, which I will wire on later. So now this just plugs in like that. My speaker's plugged in, I got my power plugged in, and now I have 3 leads. I have a lead for the throttle, the steering, the shift, and the remote coupler. My speaker's mounted, so basically my electronic part of the MSM is mounted. So now what I have to do is hook up the receiver to the MSM. So now it's time to hook this up, the receiver. So we've got these patch cables that are included. Now you can hook this to any kind of radio. I've had questions, can you use Spectrum radios? Yes, you can use any kind of radio. You need at least 4 channels, but obviously more channels are better. So the first thing we're going to hook up is the steering. Now the steering on the unit is on prop number 2, steering. Okay, so the steering on the receiver is on channel 1. Channel 1 is always the steering on FlySky radios, and we're going to hook that to prop number 2 right here. Brown lead goes out, and then the steering servo is going to hook to the second set of pins here, since we can't plug it into the receiver anymore. So we're going to verify with my little servo tester here that this is the steering. Yes, that's the steering. So that is going to hook to prop number 2 right here. Plug that in. Okay, now throttle. Throttle on a FlySky receiver is channel 3. So we're going to plug this into 1, 2, 3. And we're going to plug that into prop number 1, which is that first one here. Now that leaves our speed control to then plug in to the second set of pins here on prop number 1. Okay, so our steering and our throttle are hooked up. That's very straightforward. We've got 2 plugs on our receiver. Now, the shift servo, we're just going to double check that. Yep, I can see the shift going underneath. That's going to plug directly into the receiver on channel 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which will be, of course, the 3-position switch, low, medium, and high. Okay, now we want to have this stick operate the lights, and that is channel 2. So we're going to plug that into channel 2. This patch cable. And that is going to plug into prop number 6, which is the light control. So we're going to plug that into prop number 6. I want this one to be the horns. Okay, that is channel number 4. So we're going to plug this into channel number 4. And the main horns are on prop 3. So this will plug into prop 3. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, now we have the 2 additional channels, and we're going to use the on this radio we're going to use the 2 knobs. So I will just verify here by going to the display menu that this knob here is channel 8 and this knob here is channel 7. So 7 and 8, we're going to put those right in the center. So 7 and 8 are our 2 knobs. So 8 is the right hand knob. So we'll plug this into channel 8. And we're going to use that one to operate Turk's whistle, volume setting, compressed air, and hazard lights. So that's prop 5. Okay, the final remaining one then is channel 7. And that's obviously going to go to the final remaining prop, which is the fanfares on prop 4. Okay, so that's what that looks like. Now I have one final lead. That is for my servo operated coupler, and I'm going to put that on this switch right here, which is channel 6. So plug that directly into channel 6. Now you can see why I always like more channels. So whenever I do an MSM in the future, I'm going to use the 10-channel FlySky FSI6X. It's perfect for this because you've got 4 proportional channels here, you have 2 proportional channels here, and then you have several switches. Our shift switch, that's a coupler switch, and then these are left over, and we could use those for electronic switches, which are very inexpensive, and additional lights. So for example, if I wanted to do dash lights or interior lights or spotlights, I'd have 2 more channels I can play with, and we've got a couple empty spots here. So now this is all hooked up, so I can go ahead and figure out where to mount this. I'm going to stick it down underneath here and tie up this wiring a little bit, and then our chassis is basically complete, and we can go about getting our MSM working. Okay, everything's plugged in. Now it's time to have the MSM learn the transmitter. So we plug this in. Blue lights flashing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That puts it into setup mode. You move this up 3 and down 3, and then you move the throttle stick to the top and the steering stick to the left. Okay, so the throttle stick to the top, steering stick to the left, and then you unplug it. Now, that's the same as teaching a Tamiya MFC, although that's a lot more complicated on the MFC. On the MSM, you just move this up and move that to the left, and that's it. And that says to the MSM, okay, this is the direction the throttle moves, this is the direction the steering moves. And so now when we plug it back in, it will have learned that, and our MSM should now work with the steering. Okay, you can hear the turn signals, although that shouldn't have lit up. I'll check that out later. And when I move this down, it should turn on my marker lights, which it does. So all is good, and that should turn it back off again. Now when I move the throttle, the engine sound will start. And the engine sound will automatically shut off after 30 seconds. Now, with the throttle advance, and backing beeper, so we've got the basics working. Okay, unplug that so it doesn't make any sound. So now the basics are working. We've got steering, we've got some sound, we've got a light control. We can go through, kind of check everything out. The first thing you want to check though is, does this actually move the truck forward? On my truck, I noticed when I pushed it forward, the wheels were turning backwards. So what I have to do is just reverse the 2 wires to the motor, okay, which are right here. So I will do that, and that'll get my truck moving the right direction. And then we'll go through and do the rest of the setup. But that's really all there is to teaching this. Now that same system, where you move it up 3 and down 3 to get into the programming mode, can be used to change the model. Remember, this has 14 different models. Okay, we didn't change the model, so we're going with truck 1, which is a flashing blue LED. But in that programming mode, if you move it, once it's in the programming mode, every time you move it up, it advances to a different model, and you move it down, it advances back up. So you can pick truck 1, 2, or 3 pretty easily. Then you just unplug it, and it remembers that, and it stays that way permanently. So let me reverse the 2 wires on my motor, and we'll continue with seeing how the lights work. So that completes my chassis wiring. and I've got my plug here ready to go to the body, which we'll do next. So let's take a look at the back here first. If I move the stick down, my running lights go on. If I move the stick up, it'll be my headlights and my tail lights will be on. If I move it up again, the tail lights go off. Move it down, the bumper lights go off. If I hit reverse, the reverse lights will come on, and the turn signals blink. Now, of course, you notice that when I hit the throttle, the engine sound starts, and it'll shut off automatically after 30 seconds. On the front bumper lights, I move it down, I got my bumper lights. And then, of course, the other thing I'll have is brake lights, which brake lights are on whenever the truck is stopped. And I can also turn on my tail lights. And if I go forward, the brake lights go off. And of course, after 30 seconds, the sound will shut off, and then if you want to start it, you just blip the throttle a tiny bit, and the sound will go back on. So that's the basics of getting this installed. It was pretty straightforward. What I'm going to do now is pop this off, install the seats, and then I've got my cab here ready to install the lights in that. And so I've got headlights and high beams, which I will show. Then I've got the roof marker lights, and then I'm also going to add this light bar up on top here, and I'll show you how to do that. It's not part of the MSN, but I want to get it on there. And then my turn signals. So we'll get those all put on and wired, and then we'll plug it into this plug here, and gosh, it'll be just about done. We'll just talk about the headlights really quick. So the Grand Hauler comes only with headlights, and they use a 5mm bulb right here, and they have a little teeny hole in the outside edge. So what I've done is I've drilled through with a 3/16 drill bit, so we get a lot more light through. And then I line up the outer lens here, drill through the hole, drill it from the backside with a 3/16 bit, and you have to notch this a little bit, and that way I can add a second bulb for the clear lens. Now the second bulb, you can't shove it all the way in or it sticks too far forward, so you've got to glue it about right there so that the bulb is level with the end of this raised part. And then you also have to take a little notch here in the front of the body so that there's a place for the bulb to go through. So now what I'll do is I will install the bulbs in here, and I'll use the Tamiya plastic bracket to hold this bulb in. I'll glue this one in with hot glue, and then I can wire up those. You can see here I've installed bulbs in the three of the roof lights. The other two are here in the body, which I'll have to do. I've mounted down the light bar, and then I've installed the two turn signals, and I just have the wires hanging right now. So we'll get all these installed and then do all the wiring, and it'll be just like I did in the bumpers. The positives will all go together into one, and they will go into my positive ground. This will have its own separate plug, and then all the color wires will wire up to my little plug that I showed you earlier. So pretty straightforward. It really shouldn't take long at all to get this body done, and I'll show you a couple of views along the way. So okay, you can see here that I've taken my light wires, I've strung them all together. I actually used color-coded wire on this just to make it easier to look at. So the black wire here is all the commons, and then these are my bulbs from the front. And you can see I've started doing the lights in the roof. I've tied the positives and the negatives together. I still have to tie these two into these, and then I'll run another set of wires here, and then I'll run all of those wires to my plug. But I kind of just wanted to show you what I'm looking like. I used aluminum tape just to hold the wires down. You can see I've got the grill on, my turn signals. I've got the light bar mounted. The light bar just is a standard connector for a receiver, and I will just have a lead in the truck to plug that in. So now what do I have to do? Well, I've got to tie these wires together, put them back here. I've got a headliner made that'll go in here to cover the wiring. I've got to install the dash and the windows, and then the body will be done. Now, one other little thing I did on the truck here is I've got a little piece of plastic that I painted with semi-flat black that'll mount to the backs of the seats like that. So when you look in through the cab, you won't see any kind of wiring through the windows. So I'll go ahead and probably use double sticky tape to hook that to the back of the seats. I might glue it, but that'll kind of hide everything as you look in through the front. So onward. So I finished soldering my wires to my plug. You can see that. Everything's pretty clean. I glued in a little plastic piece to keep the wires in the corner. And in a little bit, when that glue dries, I will take a chunk out of the corner of this headliner and mount it in with the screws that mount the windshield. So now I've got my plug from the truck right here. I can plug this in. Like that. And let's fire this thing up. We'll turn on the radio and plug the truck in. Now, you can see my headlights. I've got that notch cut out there for the high beam. So my first up on the right hand stick turns on the headlight, and I'll move the right stick up for 3 seconds and it turns on the high beams. Up for 3 seconds turns them off. Down for 3 seconds turns on the marker lights. Down for 3 seconds turns off the marker lights. And it's supposed to turn off the marker lights. Up for 1 second turns off the headlights. Oh, was down for 1 second for the marker lights. On and off. The 3 seconds down is for my underglow lights, which you can't see right now because they're off screen. So, I got all my lights working. Oh, let's try the turn signals here. There's my right turn, my left turn. Yeah, everything looks good. So, that takes care of my main lights. Now I just have to put a plug in for this. I'm going to plug it into channel 10, which on this radio is this switch right here. And that'll be my, my beacon. So now I can just do a little quick tidying up, put the body on. Well, actually, I do have to do my windshields, the exhausts, a couple other little body detail things. I'll get those done. So here's my chassis complete. You can see that I've got my two plugs, one for the light bar and one for the lighting. I kind of tied up the wiring and neatened it up a little bit. And I've got my little blocking plate here installed between the seats. My speaker obviously mounted up in front on top of the servos. The extra lights glued in the front bumper. I added some pieces of diamond plate back here on the back end. that are taped down with double sticky tape. You can see I've got my servo in for the coupler. My rear bumper is pretty much stock except for the 4 additional lights that are drilled in here. And yeah, that truck has a 55 turn motor and aluminum wheels. Other than that, and of course the MSM, we're pretty stock. The body is done. My headlight covers I just glued, my wipers, so they're taped. But I've got it ready to mount. Taped up all the wiring inside. There's my light bar, there's my plug. You can see my headliner in, dash is in. So now all I have to do is install the body on the truck, plug it in, and we'll be ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and install that, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of go through the MSM operation. On the body, the only thing really I changed is it's got an aluminum grill and the light bar on top, and the metal horns. Everything else is stock. I installed the visor with screws, which I always do, and yeah, looks pretty good. I love this color. It's really easy to paint and it looks fantastic. So we'll get the body installed and we'll be back. So here's the finished truck. You can see my bumper lights, headlights, high beams, flashers, roof lights, light bar. On the back end here we've got all of our tail lights and our we don't have brake lights because the truck has to be running for brake lights. So I'm going to clean off the bench, get the camera set for a little bit better look, and then I will go through the operation of each little system with the MSM. This truck really turned out nice, beautiful looking truck, has a lot of lights on it. I think one channel has got 21 lights, which is the marker lights, and that's a lot of lights that a MFC could never run. So anyway, clean off my bench, we'll take some better pictures here. All right, well, here is our finished truck, completely done, completely ready to go. I've turned my lights down in the shop a little bit so we can see all the lighting effects. The truck is really beautiful. Turned out, I think, really nice. Boy, I really like that metal grill. Adds a lot to it. It's a typical one of my trucks. If you've watched my videos, you've seen me build stuff like this. So basically a stock grand hauler, with the exception of a few things. Obviously the metal grill, aluminum wheels, light bar, metal horns, diamond plate decking, servo operated coupler, aluminum wheels, and added lights. And that's what the video of course showed. So let's kind of go through those lights. So here's our radio, and the first thing is the light bar. Okay, now I put the light bar on the upper right hand switch here, and so every time I switch it, the light bar changes effect. Now that doesn't have anything to do with the MSM system, but it does show you why you want to have a multi-channel radio. Light bar is really cool because you'll have some extra channels you can do things with. This light bar has all kinds of functions. We'll leave it there for now. Okay, now the MSM system. When I started the video, I also showed that I might be using an electronic switch. I actually didn't need that because the MSM has so many capabilities. So everything else on the truck is operated by the MSM. So let's go through the lighting. Now, the first thing is my marker light. So I pull the right stick down for 1 second, turns on all the marker lights. So you can see the cab roof lights, the additional lights I've added in the stock bumper, and in the back end we've got our marker lights in the back, including the additional ones we marked. Okay, so there's our lighting. Now when I flip this up for 1 second, I get my headlights. I flip it up for 3 seconds, I get my high beams. Really nice looking lighting. And by drilling out those holes larger and using those nice 5mm bulbs, really get a great effect. And then the final one is if I hold this down for 3 seconds, I've got underglow lights you can see here. And those look really nice when it's dark. So we've got underglow lights, marker lights, low beams, high beams, all on the one right stick. Now on the left stick, horn, two different horns, and of course you'll notice that the engine started. So whenever you move the stick just a tiny bit for throttle, the engine starts and it'll shut off after 30 seconds. Now, while we're looking at that, let's look at the back end. You can see now our brake lights are on. So if we go forward, the brake lights go off. Or if we go backwards, the brake lights go off. Now when you're in reverse, watch again. You'll see the reverse lights come on and the hazard lights. Okay, and then of course we have right turn and left turn. So a lot of those lights are automatic, operated with the MSM. We also have the turn signals on the front. So really nice lighting. Now after 30 seconds, the engine sound will shut off automatically, and to start it back up, you just barely blip the throttle and the lights will start up. So again, we have our horns. Now we've got some additional horns. This control right here, if I go down for 1 second, got a horn. Up for 1 second, another horn. Down for 3 seconds, another horn. And if we go up for 3 seconds, it turns on the infrared trailer light controls. Now we haven't hooked that up. That'll be done in a future video. But the MSN has the ability to use infrared to duplicate the functions on a trailer, so you can have wireless trailer lights, which is something that is built right into the MSN and really a fantastic feature. Now on the right control, up 1 second gives us an air compressor sound. Down 1 second gives us the Turk's whistle, which I didn't know what that was when I did the last video, but thank you to my viewers. That is a signal that they use a lot in Europe for truckers to signal each other. Really cool sound. That's pretty cool. Now if you go up for 3 seconds, that turns this into a volume control knob. So, and then you can adjust your volume here. We also have a volume control knob inside the truck. So that's basically all the functions, and pretty easy to do. I mean, there's nothing to really remember. It's down one, turns lights off, down, turns them back on. Much simpler than the Tamiya system where you've got to flip a second switch to operate the lights. If we go down for 3 seconds, we'll turn off our underglow lights. And if we go up for 3 seconds, we'll turn off the high beams. And up for 1 second, we'll turn off the low beams and turn off the other lights. So that basically turns off all the lights. We can turn off our roof lights by just continuing to go through the functions. It's got about, I don't know, at least a dozen different functions. Now the remote coupler on this truck is this switch right here. You can see the coupler go in and out. See how nice that works. Now I actually have a separate video on how to do that. I also have a separate video on how to do the headliner. So, you know, flip through my old videos, you can see how to do that and how to do the headliner. But that's it. The MSM is just a fantastic new unit. It's very reasonably priced, does a lot of things. I've been having problems keeping in stock. It's been a huge seller, but we'll continue to get them in and get them out because since you don't need a computer to program it, it's opened up the Beier system to a whole new group of customers who really don't want to mess with computers. So there you go, Grand Hauler Beier MSM full install. I hope you enjoyed this video. Beautiful truck, and subscribe to the channel. Keep watching. Give me a thumbs up. I promise to get back on top of these videos and get them cranked out a little more often now that I'm under control. So I appreciate you sticking with me, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.